Okay, so looks like we are now live. So today we're going to do a different format. So bear with me, folks. I'm going to do it a bit differently just as an experiment. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to the old way. But this broadcast will be only for 1 hour because people are complaining about the replays being too long. So we're going to keep this to 1 hour. And what I'm going to do is just do a brief intro to summarize the issue, and then I'll go into Q&A as quickly as I can. Okay? So first, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone on the live chat. Hold on, let me just set up the view here so I can see your comments straight ahead. And just before I start, I want to thank the Patreon supporters and those who support me by buying some of the products from my store. And we have so many milestones. We've just reached 15,000. We're now past 15.2 now, 15.2K subscribers. And on library, I'm now number in the 50s, 54 to 56, depending on the day. So even on library, I'm in the top 50 plus. And here on YouTube, we're making progress. And, people are saying you need more subscribers, and it's already at 15K. So 15K, I guess, is still pretty low. So we're going to shoot for a bigger number. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to kind of rush into this before I get into greeting every one of you here. The issue is, and there's a lot of confusion about, location tracking on a phone. And people ask me the same questions over and over, and it's like I'm not being understood. So we're going to solve that. We're going to solve that by getting into just the basic description of phone location tracking. First, the first level of tracking is from the SIM card or CDMA, whatever, the carrier side of things, the baseband modem. Okay, let me be clear here. There's no escaping a phone tracking using CDMA, GSM, LTE, the carrier side. There is not a way to escape that unless A, you remove the SIM card if you're GSM, or a GSM carrier like AT&T, T-Mobile, one of those, and you take away the SIM card. That will stop the tracking. Otherwise, no. The only other way to do it is if you have a Librem 5 or a Pine phone and you switch off the setting for the baseband modem. So if you switch off the baseband modem, yes, then you'll be able to do it. Otherwise, you can't do it. Okay, now, what kind of tracking can you do with a baseband modem? It's actually pretty limited. Baseband modem tracking is actually within like maybe half a mile square. It's not very exact. It's basically triangulating cell towers, and cell towers are like a mile apart. So yeah, it's not gonna be that exact. So it's gonna say you're within a cell zone, and otherwise, to actively track you with a baseband modem, somebody has to do what is called a stingray attack, and that means somebody has to actually spot your phone if they have a known identifier like an IMSI, and they have to be really close by. Then they can sense, oh yeah, he's here within this half a mile zone. Otherwise, you can't really take that data and do mass surveillance and say, oh, he lives in this exact corner. No, it's not going to work. So when you ask me about this, when you ask me about are you tracked with a phone? Yes, you are tracked all the time with any phone. There's no escape. Unless you take off the SIM card, yes, you are tracked with a phone. Okay, that's an absolute thing. But the carrier tracking is what's involved here. And of course, government can track whatever the carriers can track. And they need some other equipment to track you using Stingray. Now they can fly some aircraft and try to go over a half a mile square area and see if you're there. That can also be done, but as you can see, that's resource intensive. That is not something that you will find that they will do except for somebody who's targeted. So for those who are not targeted, that is not an issue. So you get that side now. So I don't want to get to ask that question. Can you be tracked on your carrier side? And yes, it's very limited tracking. The scary tracking that we're talking about, and this is the one that that concerns anyone with contact tracing. The scary tracking we're talking about is the one done by Apple and Google. And there's two parts to that tracking. Again, it's absolutely unclear to many people. There are two parts to that tracking, and part one of that tracking is tracking by Wi-Fi scanning. Wi-Fi scanning is done only by Apple and Google on the phone. That's it, Apple and Google. Apple and Google are doing 24-hour location tracking on your phone. There is no permission required for this. Okay, this data is used to accumulate the routers in the area. It looks for Wi-Fi routers, not your device, Wi-Fi router specifically. And then it takes your GPS position and says, okay, you are so far away from this router and I can see other routers. And then they do what is called signal strength calculations. They compare the signal strength from one router to the other. And by doing that, they can triangulate the position of every router. That is used to populate the Wi-Fi triangulation database. This was the task that used to be done by Street View cars that drove around your house, drove around your neighborhood to check for Wi-Fi routers. That task is now called Wi-Fi scanning. That has nothing to do with giving permissions or anything. This is just going to Apple and Google, and it happens 24/7. Okay? 24/7. You can't stop it if you have an iOS phone or a Google Android. You can't stop it with a Google phone. If there's no Google on the phone, if there's no Google services, that's one of the programs that is not on the phone. They don't want to release a source code to that. That is not in the open source. So there is no Wi-Fi scanning on a Google phone. So if you're saying who can do this 24/7 location tracking, the only ones that can do it are Apple and Google. And you cannot do location scanning on Linux phones. You cannot do it on a Google phones because they don't report back to home base, which is Apple and Google. So I want to make sure that's clear. That's the second part of the location tracking. Now that's what they're going to be using for contact tracing for contact tracing apps. Now, in addition to that Wi-Fi being used to track your location, and they basically, between Apple and Google, they have the location of every person with a cell phone in the entire world. Well, most of them, because there's only 1% of us that have a Google phone or Linux phone or something else. So, or maybe you have an old phone that's like a flip phone or a BlackBerry or something old that will not have the Wi-Fi scanning. Okay? Hello guys on the chat. Again, I'm not saying hello to the chat people yet because I want to get this first portion across, and then I'll answer the questions. I'm trying to maximize the 1 hour, and then I'll get into detailed Q&A with each and every one of you. So you can ask your questions. I'll get back to it. You can ask your questions now. I'll get back to your questions. Okay, so the second part of location tracking on a phone is called Wi-Fi triangulation. Now, Wi-Fi triangulation now uses the data that came from the Apple scan and the Google scan, the database of Wi-Fi routers. Now that they have a database of Wi-Fi routers, then they allow third parties using the Google Maps API, Google Location Services, to go say, okay, this user has this router nearby and this router nearby. Could you give us this location? So that's how that works. So your phone will then do a probe and say which Wi-Fi. It's called promiscuous mode on Wi-Fi. Look for Wi-Fi routers near you, and then report that to Google, because Google's not going to immediately tell you the location. And then Google or Apple will respond back and say, oh, yeah, based on that signal strength and the fact that you're near these two Wi-Fi's and relative strength of the signal, then we know where you are within 6 sucking feet. That is called Wi-Fi triangulation. Now, that's when Google and Apple makes your location available to third parties. Because of that, that kind of tracking requires permission. It requires permission. Now, when you're using Linux, then the only kind of tracking that's actually done is by GPS. GPS, there's actually no Wi-Fi triangulation. So that's GPS tracking. Now, GPS has some limitations, some of you may not know. GPS only works outdoors. So if you're indoors, the satellites cannot be seen by your phone. So it kind of remembers where you were last, and that's what its basis is for location. So it's not very exact. So if you walk in a building, the building, the last signal may be what they're going to use, and you walk in the building and it's not going to know where you are unless you turn on Wi-Fi triangulation. Wi-Fi triangulation is permission based. So you have to give it permission by app. Okay, so it's basically saying Apple and Google knows everything about every location, and you cannot stop them from tracking you, but they will not let a third party access that location without your permission. So you can actually go and say, okay, we'll deny you a location to Facebook. Okay, so Facebook may not be given information, but Facebook takes the data from other sources. For example, Facebook likes to take your location from photos. Since you're always taking photos, it actually picks up your location from the photos. So Facebook will sneak by and say, oh, I'm on a VPN. Facebook ignores the VPN and it doesn't really pay much attention. Well, it does, but it doesn't rely on it. It's actually going to take the location from the photos. So just to make sure you understand that. So if you don't have location in the photos, then Facebook will have to resort to finding your location from the IP address, which is more general. It can't actually pinpoint that unless it does what is called reverse IP lookup, which I will talk about in a second. Okay, so now the final way of getting a location is from your IP address. Okay, let me repeat that. The final way of getting location is from the IP address. Now, how does this work? All of you are running many, many apps on your phone that's actually tracking location using Wi-Fi triangulation. So if you give permission to an app and you don't realize you gave permission, that app is collecting that location data and oftentimes using it as a way to make money. So developers will allow that data to be captured, and third-party companies, typically the ad trackers, the ads that pop up in apps that are free. So if you have a free app and it has a location, it has an ad thing on there, the ad tracker in that will actually take the IP address and your GPS position if you give permission for that, and then store that combination, IP address and your location and your GPS position, plus anything else that it can get from device fingerprint identity. If it can find your Google ID or your Apple ID, your IMSI, your IMEI, any one of those that it can get. Some of that you can't get anymore on Android 10, but on prior versions that you can. And then they take that information and they store that into a database and they sell it to, this is now the ad companies that go into the free apps. They sell this to location aggregators. And that's now sold into companies like Skyhook Wireless and so on. So you can actually subscribe to Skyhook Wireless and say, I want to subscribe to your database and do a reverse IP lookup. So what they do then is they in the reverse IP lookup, you plug in a IP address and it will return a location. As you can imagine, locations based on cell IP addresses are not so exact because many people are sharing the same IP address, so that's not going to be exact. But those using DSL, so home IP addresses, home networks, will be exact. It will find you within 6 docking feet. So that's one of the ways that location is gotten. So because of this, location actually now includes protecting your IP address. So the IP address and the location is kind of a pair, even though they're two separate data points. Okay, so Wi-Fi triangulation can be done even with a VPN, in which case you confuse the IP address part, but the location is still there. But that is called disinformation, since when they do reverse IP lookup, they get the VPN IP address, which has many, many locations, and that will be meaningless data. Okay, so you understand all that. Okay, this is not the topic tonight is not device fingerprinting. That's already discussed in a prior session. Somebody's named YouTube. How did they allow that? How did they allow the name YouTube? That's pretty funny. Okay, now so you understand the location tracking. Now let me just couple more minutes and then I'll answer your questions. So the next issue now is contact tracing. How's that done? So with contact tracing, Wi-Fi location can be used because they can go check and see who's within the same location. And if you're close by, then they can report that into a database. So they can do that already. But they're apparently going to use, and I think this is more of a political reason than anything to make it sound like they're not tracking you. They want to use Bluetooth. The idea of Bluetooth is that it supposedly doesn't track your location because there's no Wi-Fi triangulation with Bluetooth. Bluetooth is not a location tracker. Bluetooth simply says it's a proximity check. It just says you're near another device with Bluetooth. Now, they do have Wi-Fi triangulation at the same time that Wi-Fi scanning at the same time they have Bluetooth. So they actually know this. But they want to hide the fact that they're actually collecting your location, within 6 feet at all times, 24/7. They don't want to tell you that. So by saying, we're going to use Bluetooth, then that's how they're going to get away with this. Bluetooth is done by probes. Now, in the current version, in the prior versions of the OS, Bluetooth is not always on. In fact, it's off until you go and set it on in the Bluetooth area. But notice that both Google and Apple had a recent update of their OS. I'm going to guess, this is just a guess here, but I'm going to guess that they are now letting Bluetooth scanning, probes, turn on, something that they didn't used to do. So there's some updates on Google, Android, and on iOS, and I bet you they're turning on Bluetooth, so that it's always on. You don't have to turn it on. And then now they can do this contact tracing, which they already had with Wi-Fi tracking, but they want to make you feel good by saying, hey, this is not location based. We noticed that the two devices were spotted within the area, so they're going to have to do something equivalent to a promiscuous mode on a Bluetooth scanner and say, okay, I've seen these Bluetooth devices, and supposedly give you, some of you are actually so naive you don't actually understand how that works. They're saying, well, we don't really know, there's no actual identifier, and you don't actually know that the only identifier that's unique with Bluetooth is the MAC address. Okay, so Bluetooth is not a location tracking. It's simply a proximity check. But it's running at the same time as Wi-Fi scanning, so that's always running. So if you understand this, let me just draw some conclusions here so you understand. Again, If your phone has a SIM card, carrier tracking is there, which means government tracking can be done if they want to, do active tracking. You're subject to something called Stingray, but that is not a subject for normal people to worry about because who cares? Okay, that's only for somebody being under active surveillance. So I don't really include that. That's don't get too scared about that because unless you're somebody that's avoiding tracking by government because you're a journalist or something like that, or a criminal, then I don't care about if you're a criminal. That's not my concern. But if you're a journalist or somebody like that, then that you may want to worry about that and take off the SIM card. Otherwise, that is not our concern with location. The exact location is Apple and Google can always do that on your phone. So the only solution to that is not to have Apple and Google phones. You can have a de-Googled Android or a Linux phone. That's the only way to get rid of that 24/7. They can't do contact tracing on a de-Googled phone. So there you go. Contact tracing cannot occur on a de-Googled phone or a Linux phone. Can't do it. Okay? Let me repeat that. If you don't want contact tracing, the only solution is a de-Googled phone and a Linux phone. Wi-Fi triangulation is by permission. Wi-Fi triangulation is based on permission. So if you do not give permission, then there's no location tracking. Okay, pretty simple. It's based on permission. So if you deny them the permission, Wi-Fi triangulation by third-party apps will not occur. Now, just be careful here. On iOS, stupid iOS, I don't use iOS anymore. But if you go to location privacy settings, there's so many little tricks in there. They actually split off the advertising part of tracking locations. So you can't even do a global, just don't track locations. Now you got to go drill down into advertisers and so on. There's just so many levels in there now that you have to turn off because by default it is on. So if you want to really stop tracking on iOS, you actually have to go down and drill down to the advertising level of privacy settings, not just by app. On Google, it's by app. Okay, so there you go. That is the summarized explanation of location tracking plus a bonus of Bluetooth. Okay, so let me try to answer the questions here now, since I only have a little over half an hour. Again, for those of you who just came in, the new approach I'm doing is trying to see if I can limit the broadcast to 1 hour because people are complaining that the replays are long. I don't mind going up to 3 hours, but the people are complaining about the replays. So we're going to just trim it and see if it works. If it doesn't work, I'll go back because I do want to answer your questions. But you can ask the questions and inbox me. Okay, let me just see what the first question is here. And hello, everyone here. Hello, entire Iron Fist, BN, Jellyfish, Gothel, James, AMG, Galvano. Galvano, you gave some really excellent tips. Are you sure you can't be tracked if you log into Aurora Store and Micro G? Are you sure about that? I mean, I want to make sure. Mr. Midnight Owl, YouTube, Augustin Haro, Blue Skies Gnostic, Intuit, X, Blue Sky, got you there. Principe Vegeta, KFX Records. So, okay, Yin Yang, Storm Brothers Media, Greg Stanton, Chewy, Felix, Jellyfish, Crypto Shark, East Spanish. Okay, Yin Yang. Okay, let me see what question I missed here. CB triangulation, forget that. New iOS update has contact tracing automatic install. Zoc. Turn that Zucking. Well, if you're using, why are you using iOS? This is why I said you can't stop it on iOS and Android. You can't stop it on iOS and Android. You want to stop it? Get one of my phones. My phones don't have it. If you want to stop it, get one of my phones. I have G7 Plays, G7s, and Google Pixels. Those three phones, G7, G7 Play, and Google Pixel. They're all configured almost the same way. Okay, the Google Pixels are actually very nice. I thought because it's a little older, that it would be in bad comparison against a newer Moto G7, but it's actually not bad, and it's in very good condition. So I have several Pixels now, and the Play and the G7 are configured exactly the same. Okay, let me see. Thank you about the comment on the McAfee interview. Yes, do you all have? Well, you can have a Google account here on YouTube as long as you don't use your real name. Who cares? Okay. Isn't COVID tracing an overreach? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Reverse shell and reverse IP address. Well, anyone can buy the reverse IP lookup database, including Facebook and Google. I mean, it's cheap. They can buy it from all the suppliers like Skyhook Wireless. In fact, on an Apple device, the chip that does the fingerprinting and the Wi-Fi scanning is in the Qualcomm chip, and it's actually made by Skyhook Wireless. That's the actual firmware is on it. It's from Skyhook Wireless, and it's in the Qualcomm chip. So I just typed in the name YouTube. Easy. Is there a way to stop Bluetooth tracing? Yes. Get a de-Googled phone or Linux phone. Exactly what I'm trying to tell you. The only escape is get a different phone. There's no escape otherwise. Want to make that clear. There's no escape otherwise. Mr. Psycho. Okay. How can I know if I'm tracked by the government? I don't have a way to check that for you. Use a Samsung device. Yeah. Hey, hello, Locudos. Okay. You're waiting for your Pine phone. Okay. Bought a Pine phone. Hello, Michael Seeley. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for your super chat. If you do Aurora Store and the app isn't Google dependent, would you be safe? If it's not Google dependent, but if it has notifications, it is Google dependent. That's all it needs, notifications. So the way to make sure is go to F-Droid. So if it's going to be an Aurora, it might be an F-Droid. After watching your bits, I deleted my FB account. What the suck? Well, it's about time. Obviously, COVID, okay, I'm not going to say anything. How do I get away? Again, the only way to do it is to get a different phone. It's simple. Get one of the Moto 7 Plays, Moto G7 Plays, and Pixels that I have. There will be no contact tracing. It will not be there. So that's the only way I leave the house. Okay, let's see what do I have here. I have a G7 Play. Yeah, so this is my phone, G7 Play. Okay, no Google anything. And how do you know that your Google isn't on it? You will find that the battery lasts so much longer. It lasts twice as long, like 2 days minimum. I charge it maybe 2.5 days, every 2.5 days at the most. And I use the phone, so that's pretty amazing that it lasts 2.5 days. Why does it last 2.5 days? Because there's no sucking Wi-Fi scanning that happens every second. There is no Wi-Fi scanning. We have all our fortes. Yes, F-Droid. If you got Wi-Fi on and not connected to Wi-Fi, your device ID still pops up. Your MAC address pops up. Is someone able to track you through that info? No, that's a proximity check. You keep asking me that question, or John. You keep asking me that question. That's a proximity check. It's not an internet location tracker. If you are tracked using that, then they already next to you. They don't need a location check. They can see you. Okay, that is that's when they see you, then it's confirmed. If a Google ID is paired with a Bluetooth headphone, will that MAC Bluetooth address be associated with that Google ID and be tracked? Yes, of course. They're already simultaneously doing it. They're doing Wi-Fi scanning, they're doing Bluetooth contact tracing, and they have both data points. So obviously, it's possible to match all. It doesn't even matter if you have a Google phone; it's already the device fingerprint is already tracked. The only way around that is to not have a Google phone in an iOS phone. I keep repeating that. That's it. No Google phone, no iOS phone. Okay? Do you think Google and Apple share information with each other? Not yet, but they might. They might go and say, oh, for saving lives, we will share our location data and give it to the government. Wouldn't that be awesome? Your movements every 6 feet, within 6 feet, kept 24/7, shared in a national security database or international security database. That would be great. Can I keep my number with that phone? If you have, yes, you can. Again, the carrier threat. They know your phone number. Okay, so that's a separate threat. So I'm not going to worry about that. That's not a location threat itself. But even if your number is with the phone, let's say you transfer from your iPhone and then you get a Google phone and you transfer your SIM card over and transfer your phone number, I am not telling you to use that same number for two-factor authentication. That's a different topic. I am not saying use 2FA with the same phone number. Yes, you can transfer the phone number there, but I would use another device for 2FA, something cheap. Have a cheap device. You can use a Ubuntu touch phone for that, for example, but a SIM card from ting.com, pay $10 a month and use it only for two-factor authentication. That's fine. You can do that. That's what I do. In fact, no, I used it once and then I actually switched it to Google Voice using that fake phone number. The temporary phone number. I set up Google Voice. I threw away the SIM card. And now I have Google Voice on my iPhone. My iPhone is not used anymore. I actually only use it for Google Voice 2FA. That's its only purpose. So there you go. Then I keep the phone number. I never use my phone number for 2FA, two-factor authentication. So separate those issues. Okay. Huawei 4 allows defeat of Wi-Fi. That's a different scanning. So yeah, I don't think that's not the same scanning that they do on Google and Android, because that code is not in the open source. I actually look for it in the open source. If it's in there, then I should be able to find it, but it's not in there. So it's not in the open source. I'm a programmer. I can look at the source code of Android. The Wi-Fi scanning, that one I'm talking about, that they use for Wi-Fi triangulation, that code is proprietary. It is not in the Android open source, which obviously this is something they want to do. Now, so Huawei likely does not do that kind of Wi-Fi scanning, but they could substitute something else. But they probably don't know how to do it yet, so they probably don't do anything. So Huawei probably has something else that they're doing, but not that. What's a mini VP? The Play Store on MicroG may be less than ideal from a privacy perspective, but still better than the real thing with the Play services, which is where all the black magic happens. Yeah, let's say you have a Google phone. You definitely don't need to use MicroG or Aurora, as in my video. You can, or you can just turn it off, in which case the only thing that will happen is you will never get notifications and location services will not work for apps that need it. So what apps need location services? Uber, Lyft, those kinds of apps require location services from Google. If you don't need that, you can actually turn off MicroG. You just won't get notifications and you won't get location services. If you turn off micro G, then nothing goes to Google. Nothing. So it's up to you. You make the choice. When I sell my phones, I only preload Signal and Brax.me, and you can delete those if you want. Brax.me only uses notifications. You can turn notifications off on micro G. Notification doesn't work anyway in Brax.me, and I have to check Galvano's solution. He said punch a bunch of numbers and then it will register with Google. I'm going to try that to see if that works. But for my case, micro G does not work for me. For what do you call this? For notifications. Okay, so it looks like we're doing good on time here. It's only 8:35, so I still have 25 minutes here. I'm rushing. Does using a Faraday cage sleeve really blocks a microphone being accessed? It blocks the signal. It doesn't block a microphone. It blocks the transfer of data. So a live broadcast will not occur, but it could be recorded. So yeah, is it possible to enable correct signature micro G on work profile? Is it possible to enable correct signature on work profile? Which signature are we talking about? If you're using the Lineage OS, if you're using the actual Lineage OS, you cannot spoof the signature. You need a special version from micro G. So I don't use Lineage OS. I use a version from micro G where they spoof the signature. We track every there you go. Good. Okay. Crypto Shark says, does a Faraday cage? Yeah, that's not a relative question. You are a software guy. I'm a hardware guy. Different ends of the spectrum. You understand. Okay, what did you ask, Gnostic? We all have our fortes. Well, that doesn't mean I don't build hardware. I mean, I do. I make where's my I make surveillance cameras and radars, and I do hardware too. So where's guess I don't have one here, but yeah, I do hardware as well. So, I'm not a electrical engineer, so that's my limitation. But I understand enough. Is SD card track when phone is SD? No, SIM card. SD card is not tracked. No, when it's off, it's off. Is there any open source vendor for any Android phone? Is there any open source vendor for any Android phone? What does that mean? AOSP is open source. That's what I use. I only use open source, and everything that I use is open source. So it's modified open source. There's always some open source version. I don't add any custom source to it. When I open running services and developer options, Iris always turns on when I turn on my phone, even though I never set up face recognition. Is my phone using biometric scans regardless? It can. I don't know, but if you have a Google phone, then I can't tell you what it's running or not running. So that's why I have a de-Googled phone. It doesn't have that. That is not in a de-Googled phone. Okay? Don't worry about keeping time constraints on your live stream. I'd be up all night watching you if you broadcast it all night. Yes, Locutus and Borg, but I'm doing a test here because people are complaining about the length of my videos. Should we let orcs into Gondor? Suck. Hell no. All these people tracking us, they're all the orcs. A bunch of number stands for check-in word. Enable GCM in micro G settings. That GCM is Google Cloud Messaging or Firebase Cloud Messaging. The number, bunch of number plus call button and back to micro G settings, and GCM should connect. I will try that, Galvano. I will try it. I haven't had time yet. A lot of people do not understand some things are inbuilt to their hardware, Rob. Yes, I know that, Gnostic. I know that's why you're afraid of something called blobs. Binary blobs it's not open source. You don't know what it's doing. The biggest problem on every phone is the cell baseband modem. And then the other big problem is the Wi-Fi card. And the Wi-Fi is being used by Google and Apple to do the location tracking using the Wi-Fi card and GPS. And the Bluetooth. That's always all in the one card. It's a Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, all that is in one card. So they're using all that. So yes, it's called a blob because they don't have to tell you what's in the source code. So you actually don't know. By the way, there's so many concurrent viewers. There's 106 of you here. And there's only 41 likes. So since this is going to be a short live stream, I hope I have a chance to tell you to hit that like button. If you like, if you don't like, then hit dislike. So, and thank you. Thank you for doing that. Again, thank you for the patron supporters, and thank you for Mike who gave a super chat. Thank you for those who buy my products from my store. That's going to sustain this channel. And I can't really rely on YouTube to sustain me since I make $250 from YouTube. That's all I make from YouTube, $250. Graphene is fine. Graphene is fine. Can you recommend an email provider that respects privacy and doesn't require a phone number or backup mail for confirmation? You mean an email provider or a email client? You can use Outlook. Outlook doesn't seem to ask anything, but I don't really want any of that. You need to have a private email server if you can. And, I'll offer that service at some point. This is not going to be like Proton Mail, where you share an email service with everyone on Proton Mail. What you want in the future is your own domain where you have the freedom to assign your own email addresses to your domain. So it's a little bit more expensive because you control it, but you can set up 1,000 email addresses. Nobody cares. And it's your domain, and anyone who talks inside the domain, obviously it's going to be visible only to those who run the server. Thus, it is more secure even than Proton Mail. And you don't need to encrypt, you don't need to do anything since it's your own. Okay? Thank you, is it Damien Cho? Thank you. So I'll do that later on. I'll provide that service. I need to set up virtual machines to do that, so it's cheap. Otherwise, it's expensive to do. But I'm at some point, I'm just gonna have to set up a server, and then you just rent that kind of email server, and that will be the safest solution, where you can set up your own email addresses, and you can set up all of your family, your office, whatever, with your own email server. It's very hard to do an email server. So I'm just so you know, for those of you who have experience like me when we were setting up email servers in the 90s, it's very hard now because spammers. Then you get blacklisted. So you need to often use a service like Amazon, and then you have to pay Amazon to handle your email. So that's the only way you can do it nowadays. Okay. By open source vendor, I mean the manufacturer drivers that run alongside the kernel and AOSP. That kind of vendor. Yeah. Only on Linux. Only on Linux. Principia Vegeta. Only on Linux. So on Linux I can do it. I like immediately when I come into the chat. Thank you. Are Chinese and USA agencies mutually exclusive in privacy threat models? Yes. Yeah, they have different objectives. So it's actually, state players, individual state players, they all have different goals, so they don't share data. They are separate threats. So that's state players. Then you got your corporate threats, meaning Apple, Google, and so on. Then you get the threats from the aggregators, the what's the name? With a P. Peter Thiel's company. You know what I'm talking about? Peter Thiel's company. Big spying enterprise, mercenary spying firm. What is it? Jigsaw and that company. Palantir. There you go. Yeah, that's another threat, separate. Okay. So, what's the safest, most anonymous phone to buy? The ones I sell, like I told you, have no identity. They don't have any Google device fingerprint. They're basically invisible. Until you use a Google app, they're basically invisible. Except to the carrier. The carrier knows, but there's no tracking other than by SIM card, which is, like I said, yes, they can track every phone call you make and all that, but that's it. They can track your texts too. Whitetails is so much popular than Kodachi. Would I need to change phone number? No, you do not, Greg. You do not need to change phone number for the Google phone, but do not use that for 2FA, two-factor authentication. Do not. That's a separate risk. No, I'm not a fan of any kind of encrypted DNS, and I've seen Next DNS. Some people load that app. Why? Why are you using my name on YouTube? That is troublesome. That is very troublesome. Where can I buy a phone? On Brax.me, Brax.me. Go to Brax.me and look for me. It's in my profile. Go to Brax.me. It's my profile. If you want a shortcut, just type rob.brax.me in your browser, and it will automatically go to Brax.me and send me a message. And then you'll see my pic, and then you can find the store. What is best beside Google 2FA? What does that mean? What is best beside Google 2FA? 2FA is 2FA. It's not by Google. It's whoever's asking for 2FA. We'll check it out. Thank you, Damien Cho. Rob.brax.me. Is international delivery available? Yes, it is. Limitations? Let's see. I even shipped to Hong Kong. It worked. I think some small countries in the world, I can't ship to some small countries, like in Asia and South America, because there are no flights. So India should be okay, but there are no flights to some small countries. So, if let's say you ask for Middle East, there's a problem with getting flights there. India's okay. It's okay with Europe. I'm able to ship to Europe. I'm able to ship pretty much any place else. Don't know about shipping to China. I haven't tried, but I have shipped to Hong Kong. We are Legion. Okay, so do you recommend cubes for someone who wants to switch from Mac, Windows to Linux? No, that's too difficult. No, I wouldn't recommend that. You get enough security just running a standard Linux, but what you do is use a router hardware. Do you know that if you use Ubuntu or Mint or Manjaro or any of that and use a Brax router, that you're actually running like cubes and Unix? Because that's what this is doing. It basically puts the routing, it's called SOX5 routing, onto hardware. That's what a Brax router does. It puts it in hardware. So it does exactly what SOX5 does, but the SOX5 is now in hardware. Therefore, Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Manjaro running with a Brax router is actually like running Unix in cubes, but it's much easier because you don't have to worry about slow Tor access. So that is the same thing, same effect. That's what I use, because it's really hard to use cubes and Unix, and it doesn't work on all devices, and it's very, very incompatible. So this is really the solution. No, don't use your pfSense router. Anyway, you got to worry about some of these devices that are out there, and they don't check them for IP leaks and WebRTC leaks and any other kind of a leak. And this one is very certain. It doesn't even need a kill switch, because if the connection to the server VPN goes down, or Tor, because you can use this with Tor as well, the device is dead. There is no leak. It just dies. Okay? Jigsaw is Google. Thank you, Android Stud. Ooh. You must be an expert. Oh no, too many Robs. Getting confused. Which is the real Rob? What does the ISP see if we use that with Tor? Not much. They see that you're using encrypted traffic. What the encrypted traffic is? Not much. If you actually use Tor on this, nothing. Cubes is not for newbies like me. That's right. Snicker. Okay. Yeah. You see, this is a tunnel. It tunnels your connection. So the ISP doesn't see anything because it's tunneled through here. Okay. So has your view changed on 5G from your video last year on how harmful it is? No, absolutely not. If I can, the problem is I'm getting messages now from Ting.com that said, oh, we're not going to support your phone because it doesn't do 5G. So, you're going to have to get a new phone that does 5G. And I'm like, suck you. I'm going to, keep myself to any carrier that doesn't do 5G as long as they offer, 4G, LTE, and 3G, then I'm going to go with that carrier. And that is likely going to be T-Mobile. They will keep it the longest. Take my money. Does Navionics app for sailing require Google services? You can probably use MicroG because Navionics will use GPS, that's local. Does it need location service? Probably not. It just needs a GPS. So I've never tried it, like Navionics apps on the phone. I have hardware for that on a boat. So I don't really know. Are you still using? Of course. The problem is I'm waiting for the Pine phone to be more stable so I can make a video. So I'll pass on beam steering and yes, if I can pass on 5G, I would. It's like, beam me up, Scotty, with 5G. It's like Zuck. So, do you know that if there's 5G, they can pinpoint anyone's location in the world from the carrier? Now they can't. Right now, a carrier needs to use the GPS or hack into, Google and Apple to get your location. They can't get the exact location from the phone because LTE doesn't have that capability. And with 5G, Zuck, they know where you are in inches, not 6 feet, inches, because the beam will point at you. They say, where are you? Well, where's the beam point at? Boom. Over there. All Linux distributions are safe, mostly. Some people don't think Ubuntu is too safe, but I'm fine with it. Is your router fast enough? It's a gigabit router. Gigabit router. You can use it in wired mode. So wired, it's gigabit. So use it in wired. You can use any number of other Wi-Fi routers with it. So you can use some big one, plug it into a dongle into this, and this will route it gigabit speed to the internet. Now, of course, your distance to the VPN controls that speed, so that may vary. But assuming you have a fast device, then that's the only issue. It'll be the speed of the VPN. Like if you're next to the VPN, like I am, 100 megabits is not a problem. But nowadays, it's really difficult to get that now because of everyone being at home doing live streaming. I think I saw a video talking about messaging apps and recommended end-to-end encryption texting services, Signal, Jabber. Okay, I'm running out of time here. Braxme obviously is a messaging app that I recommend because it's mine, and it doesn't require a phone number. I use Signal. Signal's good if you're talking to somebody you know, because they already know your phone number. I don't like to use it for people I don't know. I'd rather use Braxme for that. Okay, so They're both encrypted apps. So, but that's my store is also on Braxme. So if you're gonna go to Braxme anyway, then you should use it. It's free. Why don't you make a smaller device for VPN router? I will, Orjan Carlson. I said it's gonna be the Pine phone, but can you afford a Pine phone for $150 plus my software for $99? So if you get that, yes, you have one device that's gonna be an LTE plus a VPN router. I haven't worked on it yet. It's I got to get some stability. So soon, a portable one so you can have it on the go. Yes, that's the plan. Is to use a Pine phone as a VPN LTE router. I will have that soon. I haven't worked on it yet, but it's easy. I can do it in a weekend. Short attention span these days. Yes. Do you know Techlore and the Hated One channel? Yes, I have watched Techlore. I have not watched the Hated One. On a scale of 1 to 10, how secure is iOS? 1? 1. On a scale of 1 to 10, how's Android, Google Android? 1. They're spying on you. How can you be more than 1? They're spying on you. Forgot how much of a pain this website was. Can using NFC data transfer not you can see your attacker if that's the case. If you're doing it over at Starbucks, but it's still hard to do that because there's encryption in there. Bluetooth has encryption and file transfer. Okay, we're running out of time here. Should I be concerned about vendor blobs on a Pine phone? No, not on a Pine phone. No. Yes, the modem will have the same risk. I wouldn't worry about the Wi-Fi. Modem has the same risk as any phone. But you can switch it off. I use my longtime SIM card and it'll be BB9900 if I screw myself. No, that's perfect. Just don't use it for two-factor authentication. It's fine. Is that Cena? Yeah, I had a BlackBerry World 9900. I sold it. I sold it here on YouTube. Your opinion on Nord Locker? I don't have an opinion since I don't know it. So I need your router, an ISP's router connected to the coax. You connect this. There's an Ethernet port there. You connect it to the back. You wire into. Do I have an extra wire in here? You wire that into the back of your existing router. So this sets up a subnet. So if this is your main router, this is a subnet to it. This has its own DHCP. Your main router is still running. So nothing with your main router has changed. It still works. But instead of connecting to this, you connect to this or anything after it. If you have other routers in here, you connect after this. But your existing one still exists. Okay, my phone said CA certificate has been installed on my device. I don't know what is that? What's the concern with that? That's not an issue. Snowden's lava bit has been back in business. I don't care. Email's email. Email is email. Don't try to make email safe. The only safe email is if it's your own. And even that is not safe. Okay? How people do not... okay, so... okay, we're down to a couple of minutes here. Okay, so I hope I kind of squeezed in a lot of answers there. It's like... this is, again... thank you for watching. This is kind of a different approach to squeeze in. See, it's more efficient use of time when you squeeze into 1 hour. I'm forced to squeeze into 1 hour. So thank you for watching this, and hit that like button. I'm going to end this in 1 minute, and we'll see if this works. You can see I've got like a little bit of a sunburn. I've been out in the sun working on my boat. And I'm going to go sailing tomorrow. So, Anyway, I'm on Brax.me, and my store is also on Brax.me. Brax.me is a very good private privacy app because it's pseudo anonymous aside from being encrypted, and it's one of the safest things you can have out there. It can run on a browser, it can run as an app, it can run on your Google phone, it can run on your iOS and Android phone, and it can run on a computer. So it can run on Linux, can run on a Mac, it can run on PC. So it doesn't matter what you use, it always works. Okay, so I'm going to make a video next week, obviously. So thank you again. I'm trying to keep this to an hour, so I'm going to stop the broadcast. I appreciate it, and we'll see what happens if this works. This 1 hour. Thank you very much. See you next time.